Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Our Life Beginnings and Always. This is episode 7, and we are going to do our last, middle school moment, and then move on into, high school. I think that's where we go next. So let's get started. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightning by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity as both your family and coves prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in your I'm with you. Because parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see Redwood National Park. You glanced at Cove, was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had been a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best he could, especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. Relatable. I'm gonna need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. It was way too early. You yawned and rubbed your eyes, still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside was still damp from dew. That helped make you a bit more alert. And then, at the end of the chain, came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on. I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Mandy is the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones. I was about to say, I don't think she liked that. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with the answer in the slightest, folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior to the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on to her objections with them. There was a main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed. Kira was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. It's fine. It's a few days. As long as you had a place to rest your head of some description, it didn't bother you. Alright, you lot, does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bedhead hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, setting her hands on her hips. How about you, Mandy? Do you have all your clothes packed, toiletries, deodorant, floss, anything else you can think of? Oh, we forgot something. I know me. We forgot something. Sprinting up the stairs to the bathroom, you grabbed your toothbrush from beside the sink before heading back down. You were glad you were reminded to grab it after having left it out to use this morning. Would have been embarrassing if you couldn't brush your teeth for the next few days. Your ma was still there, waiting with a knowing expression as you walked out again. Got everything now, Mandy? Yeah. With a few minutes left to spare. Oh no. Okay. A few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had to get packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow and blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had more personal things, such as... probably this. With so much time going to be spent driving in a car, you wanted to make sure you'd be able to have some music to put on. And that. The drive to the Redwood National Park would take an entire day one way, so you wanted to make sure you had a way to entertain yourself while traveling there and back. Oh, and the camera, of course. It was just a little pocket camera you had gotten from your mom's, but you couldn't miss the opportunity to take some new snaps. That was it. Hey, let me take that for you, Mandy. I'll stow it in the RV. There's a few spots left. It'll fit. You let Kira take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kira and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finishing packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartments of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away anywhere together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, a bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. Usually she wasn't one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV or food or to leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You suppose any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. Cove had been pretty quiet so far and, more than anything, seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. Oh, I was excited. It was great to get away and explore new places. Soon as the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Everyone piled into the RV. Officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kira were all huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit. The RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove's dad to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax now, too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out of the driver's seat and Mom took over. Ma was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial on the controls, as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. We're making good progress. Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place. I don't need sleep. I've still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point about how resilient he was. Home, and Kira rolled her eyes in amusement. Dad, everybody has to sleep. Cove shook his head at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair. Are you going to be driving it again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach as she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kira laughed lightheartedly. Lucky for all of us, We have enough adults to cover the shifts today. He won't be driving again until tomorrow. Listen, this is funny. Just enough time to write up my last will and testament. Not you two. The rest of the group laughed while Cliff pouted. You gave him an apologetic shrug. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join in on the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is the old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. Must be older than some of the occupants. That's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kira wrinkled her nose in thought. Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her, while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed. You held onto the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head, where a weight settled on your purple hair. When you tilted your chin up carefully to look, you heard the rustling of a bag of chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. Obviously, I took a handful. Who doesn't like chips? Reaching up, you scooped some chips. After the weight of the packet left your scalp, you happily munched away as the conversation continued on and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by with the group of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and setting up for the night. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after had arrived at your destination, found a spot to park for the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kira was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kira herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden needed to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms to the back room and closed the door behind you, or crawling into bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing. Get a good rest, Mandy. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow. I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There will be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little while longer, while your mom whispered about the park and forest in general. With the sound of their voices in the background, eventually you nodded off to sleep. Alright, what are we doing? The next morning you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. Okay, sleep. Nothing compared to your bed at home, but at least you didn't have to sleep on the floor, so you couldn't complain too much. Ma whined a bit about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own as the others were doing the same thing. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking up his legs every time somebody wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you had stopped listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpacks that were packed up, ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. Didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV in a bustle and headed into the Redwood National Park. Wow. Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person. Smile, you two. You spun around just in time for Kira to snap a picture of you and Cove together. For she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protests that she should just enjoy the moment. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in a brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to get to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide, if you know so much about the place, Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. Honestly, how could you not be? Surrounding you on either side, the enormous trees shot up into the sky, the sunlight peeking through their canopy and speckling the path in front of you. The sheer size of the redwoods made you feel like a tiny ant bustling along through the forest. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks, rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove, as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was going to say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like that happening, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove smiled at her, even if it was a little awkwardly, continued walking along. Just watch, next year they'll be talking about their next new amazing idea. She put on a fake voice, deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think about how much we'd save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You suppose he was used to this at this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you. Maybe one day we will be related, legally anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. Maybe. I guess you and me could get married, Elizabeth. That'll work, I'm sure. What, me? Yeah, that way Mandy would be my sister-in-law. That would be fun. Elizabeth stuck her tongue out at Cove, as if the very idea were ridiculous. We'll be embarrassed about it. Why did she always have to say things like that? It wasn't fun and she knew it. After no further replies, your sister walked ahead. You and Cove swapped uncomfortable looks. The day continued on, with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said it would have to wait for another trip. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and set up a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. I think that would be true. You were disappointed to only have one day in the park. There was so much here, and you felt like you need a whole week, maybe even more, to experience it all. You sighed quietly to yourself, wondering if you'd get a chance to come back. Your group made it to the camp just as the sun was setting in the sky, and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner, then afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey there, and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. We hung out with Cove. We might as well get comfortable. Who knows how long they'll be out for. You took a seat on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer. Oh yeah, I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot. Relatable. Oh my god, you're so right, sir. And it's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. I'm the same way. They're bulky and heavy, and they usually make me feel too warm. Cove smiled lightly at you and nodded. I've noticed. Alright, let's be nosy. Hey, what kind of things do you think are nice to see on another person? Cove's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he had a chance to have a proper think about it. Nothing? Brother, chill. Do we want to laugh? I mean, genuinely, I would laugh. So, laughed out loud, and Cove gave you a dry look. Come on, that's not what I meant. You composed yourself and sat up straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. Answer with what you do mean, then. Isn't there anything at all you think looks good when you see it on someone? Cove mumbled under his breath, and you couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. Well, we'll say this. I swear I won't make fun of you. That's not really it. Cove seemed pretty grumpy about your statement, but you weren't ready to give up so easily. Please? Cove sighed and looked down at his lap, where he was fidgeting with his hands, still reluctant to give an answer. I don't know. You made an unimpressed sound over how this was going. Are you sure? Fine, I guess. I kind of like ankle bracelets. Ankle bracelets? Yeah, everyone can wear a pretty bracelet. Wrist ones are cool too, but they're pretty normal. There's something fun or flirty about ankle bracelets, like, oh, the ankle peeking out. Oh my god. It's more special or something. I don't know how to explain it. Cove brushed his knuckles against his cheek awkwardly, seeming unsure where to go from there. How uncomfortable do we want to make him right now? We said we wouldn't make fun of him. I feel like that's pretty close to making fun of them. I guess we'll leave it alone. We embarrassed him enough when he said nothing. You're welcome. When he said nothing else, you took a moment to gather your own thoughts. Let's go with that. You had a couple of different ones at home. With this new knowledge, you might slip them into your daily outfits in the future. Cove looked away again, feeling awkward about this. You gave him an understanding look, and soon enough, he was smiling like normal again. Well, now you have to answer too. What do you like for another person? We'll go with glasses. That's fine. Cove chuckled, as though you had said something highly amusing. Good luck. I hope you find someone. Well, the odds are great, you know? With that topic abruptly dropped off, Cove officially had no more to say on the subject. The parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV, finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but we would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for all of them to get up. Now was the time that you check that you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room, while you climbed up to the loft. Cove and his family got situated below the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over. Before you knew it, you'd be back in your own bed at home. We enjoyed this mini adventure. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. Didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kira to drift up to you. They were asleep now. You wondered if Cove was still awake. Decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked through the dark. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove laying on his back, his eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out on his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him, because suddenly his eyes locked on yours. It is difficult to see much in the dim light, but you can make out that crooked smile on his face well enough. You grinned back at him. Cove shrugged in his bed while still smiling, or at least you thought he did. You gestured for him to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow, and froze up like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Eventually, he managed to maneuver around his sleeping dad, to make it to the ladder, standing on the bottom rung where he looked up at you and whispered, "What?" Listen, all that ruckus for this. Hi. Cove shook his head in disbelief, but you could see the hint of a smile peeking out. Good night, Mandy. He turned right around, crept back to his spot on the floor. You laid down, shuffling onto your back, and looking up at the rivets set in the roof of the RV through the dark. At some point, your eyes grew heavy. You gently drifted off into a deep sleep. When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it traveled along the long journey home. Still blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft to get a glimpse at what was happening. Cove was sitting with his mom on the couch, the two of them talking quietly. He must have noticed you moving around up there because Cove's ocean blue eyes snapped to yours and he gave you a smile. Morning, Mandy. Morning, Cove. Soon, your moms and Elizabeth emerged from their rooms dressed and ready for the day of travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Kira suggested a few different travel games she used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your own bed after the last few days anyway. After the last few days away, whatever you want. Everyone else must have been feeling the same, as it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until morning. Once home again, you went straight up to your room and dropped onto your bed, shoes and all. I mean, genuinely. You stretched out with a smile on your face, enjoying having the space all to yourself. Those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow, life would go back to normal. All right, what a trip. That was beautiful. All right, we're gonna end this phase. Are we sure? We're sure. We've done everything we can. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you were heading to class. It was a bummer. Summer had been so much fun. When you thought about going back to school, it was with a sense of loss. Soon you wouldn't be able to choose how your days were spent without the school bell telling you where to be and when. And never enough time to go to the bathroom. That's what I remember most from school. I remember you had like 3 minutes or whatever, or 5 minutes. It was something really short that if you had to go across the school, no you don't. You don't got time. And then they'd get mad if you had to go to the bathroom during class. When are you supposed to go? Between classes? I don't think so. I'm sorry. This is a personal pet peeve. It was with a heavy heart that you chose your outfit for your final day of freedom. Life was going to be different. You had come to think of the summer vacation as the norm, but school sucked up the majority of the year, whereas the summer vacation was just a respite in the middle. So rather than it being different, it was kind of a return to the normal. What did your normal life really mean? Oh no, we're getting existential. You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. You dimly recognized that one year the pattern of school and summer itself would be over for good. That's a dark time. That's a dark time. I think everybody needs 3 months off a year. And then 2 very long vacation periods in between those months. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted, one arm still out of a sleeve. You pulled it through and put your mind back to the present. This season had brought about plenty of changes of its own, like Kira's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. You were happy you'd finally got a chance to know her. She was interesting to be around. You liked how easy it was to talk to her. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You'd agreed to see his mom off together. Officially, the plan was that he would come over to bring you round to his house when she was ready to set off, but you both knew that you'd be hanging out for at least a little while beforehand. Kira's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been such a sudden change, thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people. But once he was able to adjust, he'd been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief for everyone. You turned to your desk, where the box containing your accessories resided. A thought struck you like a bolt. Your eyes bored into the box. Should you wear an anklet for Cove's visit today? You had some nice ones that you hadn't used in a while. Absolutely. Just one. I mean, you don't want to overkill. Just like a whoopsie. I completely forgot about our conversation, you know? As you threaded the hoop through the clasp, you had wondered if Cove would spot what you'd done, and how he'd react if he did. A cheeky grin grew on your face. The next thought that crossed your mind was, you couldn't wait to see Cove. You bounded down the stairs, your hand gliding over the rail. You wanted to make sure you got there first. If you didn't hurry, your moms might answer it. It was only a few minutes later when the doorbell rang. As you'd chosen to stand beside it to wait for Cove, there was no delay in pulling it open. Cove was there just as you'd expected. Seeing you, he flashed a bright grin. Hi, Mandy. Hi, Cove, come on in. Once he stepped inside, you beckoned for him to follow you upstairs. Back up in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered them a seat, but you and Cove were long past those tentative stages of friendship. Your room was as familiar to him as his own. You watched as Cove sat down in your desk chair, his preferred spot. He rolled it closer to the bed to make it easier to chat, tweaking the angle so he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, hands held in his lap. His actions weren't ones of someone who planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When is your mom leaving? We've got some time. She's still got a shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to just keep hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his head, his gaze drifting out through the window, and chuckled. I can't believe she's already leaving. Just when I'm getting used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile tickling his cheeks. We'll say she'll be back. He cocked his head thoughtfully before shrugging. He ran a hand through his hair before shaking his head, as if shaking off the topic like a dog whipping water following a dip in the sea. Cove looked back at you, lips parted as if he was about to speak, but instead his eyes widened and his mouth closed into a tiny frown. Something had caught his attention. Something wrapped around where the end of your leg met your foot. He cast his eyes back up to your face, then down to your ankle, then back to your face. He repeated the process once, twice more, as if struggling to hold the two items in tandem. Maybe he was weighing up whether this could be a coincidence or not. Or maybe he was just too shy to verbalize his thoughts, was still trying to find the words, and this was the most he could manage. The attention made you feel pleased. The whole plan was for him to see you in it, and you'd succeeded. While his attention was still divided between your ankle and your face, it was totally on you. On his next glance back to your face, Cove saw your expression had shifted. You watched as his bewilderment eroded into mortification as he realized that he had been caught staring. Listen, once you've hit like 2 or 3 times, you're done. Once, sure. Twice, 3 times, it's over. Everybody knows. He quickly spun in the chair to face the wall instead, allowing you to glimpse the flesh that had spread all the way to his ears. His embarrassment finally wore off, enough for him to pipe up again. I hope you're not doing that to make fun of me. What do you mean? You know, about what I said before on the road trip. What'd you say before? Cove groaned, tilting his head up to the ceiling. He had not bought your act. Why do I ever tell you things? Listen, we're not letting up. You lifted your leg up and pointed it towards his chair so you could get the best view. Cove just huffed in response. He jerked his face to the side. You waited patiently, not taking your eyes off him or lowering your foot until he gave in. Well? The roll of his eyes, he conceded. I think it looks good. Cove prodded an accusing finger in your direction. But you already knew that because I told you. His comment drew a grin from you. He smiled back, the final shadows of his frantic initial reaction swept aside. Cove perched an elbow on the chair's arm and propped his jaw against his curled hand. There was a natural ease to his movements, a familiarity from the echoes of all the times before when he'd sat in that same position. This was a really nice summer. I'm glad we got to spend so much time together. Cove, still nestled cozily in your chair, smiled at your response. How are your fish doing? Really good. Oh, Chucky. We named his fish Chucky. Things in the tank are stable and everybody looks healthy. That was nice to hear. You'd learned from Cove how hard it was to maintain an aquarium. Chucky has been busy. Keeps darting between the plants and out again when I walk by like a game of peekaboo. Peekaboo. I'm so sorry. Or hide and seek. Yeah. Cove idly glanced out the window. He gave a resigned sigh. It's going to be harder to surf. You know, with school, it's getting colder out. I don't want to get rusty. I like surfing, but I wish it liked me. I can't stick to the board. He gave a light smile, coupled with a shrug as response. Mandy, Cove! The sudden call from downstairs caught you both unaware. You'd nearly forgotten the world outside your room. And the guilty look on his face, Cove had done the same. Just had a call. Cove's mom is ready to go. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum. You doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Miss Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way there was painfully slow, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. His whole body tense leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you could both cross the street. The door's open. Dad must be taking her stuff out. He swallowed hard. She's really gonna leave. You smiled at him reassuringly. Cove looked at you like he was hoping you had a solution for how he was feeling. All you could do was give his arm a squeeze for support. At that, some of the conflict warring on his face eased a bit. Together, you went across the street and inside his house, finding his parents in the living room surrounded by his mom's packed things. Hey, kids. Good timing. I just called the taxi. And hi, Mandy. So glad I get to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer. I finally got to put a face to the name I've heard so many times. She winked, and Cove pouted on cue over the teasing. I'm happy I got to meet you too. Hopefully it won't be too long before we see each other again. Nodding, Kira turned her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile. Then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly. I'm so happy this trip was a success. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. And then Cove stiffened. Kira loosened her hold on him enough to study his face, concerned. She spoke her next words in a whisper that had been meant just for her son. Do you want to unshelve it? Raising an eyebrow, Cliff watched them carefully. His smile began to falter. What's wrong? Cove's gaze moved to the floor. He looked like he was grappling with where to begin. But then Cliff smacked a hand to his own cheek. The noise caught everyone's attention. Cliff's eyes were wide, and you could clearly see the light bulb moment he was experiencing on his face. Shouldn't have been a surprise. I went behind your back again. Yeah. It only took me until the very last moment to realize it. Sure. Crossing his arms, Cliff laughed at himself. You could tell it was out of frustration and disbelief rather than the usual good-natured feelings. I'm so sorry. I thought I had gotten better at this. You have. Cole's voice was small, but it was enough to break through his dad's thoughts. Cliff's mouth pulled into a small smile. It's been a long time since something like this happened. Not long enough. You deserve better than a blockhead falling back into old habits just because things seem to be going good. It won't keep happening. I promise I'll work on it. We all can work on it. I can try harder myself to be in the loop on what's actually happening over here. A happy smile quickly spread across Cove's face. He answered delicately. Okay. Very delicately. You felt relieved seeing how much the whole family had grown together since you first met them. They could talk to each other more easily. After that, it wasn't long before the taxi arrived, rolling up in front of the house and in clear view of the open door. Kira stood up, smiling sadly. Well, that's my ride. Yeah. The matching reply got a chuckle out of Kira's, and as you all filed out of the house. Father and son went with Kira's bags in hand. Once outside, you spotted your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was also with them. He stood uncomfortably, and he waved as soon as you noticed him.
What's up?
Hey, Mandy. Hi, Cove. When'd you get here? My dad dropped me off a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started.
Sorry.
You picked a busy time. Sorry. Derek couldn't even look at Cove. He nervously kept rolling a pebble with the bottom of his shoe.
Sorry.
I wasn't even thinking that your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry, dude. What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here. It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving. Derek came to hang out so often, so it wasn't inevitable that the two had met at some point this season. Derek came to hang out so often, so it was inevitable that the two had met at some point this season. I think so too. It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but their reassuring words soothed his worries. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself. Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you. Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help? Nah, don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set. In that short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kira took one last look at everyone inside. All right, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out. The little crowd that had formed around started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling, but Kira still made no move to get into the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove. I'll call when I get to the airport and when I make it to Nevada. Also, you better call the moment you walk in the door at home. Otherwise, we'll be wondering all night if you got into trouble on the way there. I can do that. And could you call tomorrow too so I can tell you how school went? Of course, I want to hear all about it. Kira put a hand on Cove's head and affectionately ruffled his hair one last time. She then let go, only to move on to squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead. Mom, I love you so much, baby. She was chuckling by the time she freed him and rounded things off with a small tap to the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed at his face with a grin. Finally, she walked to the car while waving and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad, then wrapped an arm across his back. Bye, Mom. Bye. Safe travels. Travel safe. Kira rolled down the window and stuck her head out of it. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff. See you again. Before she was out of sight, you decided to... We'll say bye. As you added your voice to the others, you watched Kira's smile grow larger. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a few steps out into the empty street, still looking in the direction his mom went. He smiled quietly, deep in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulling you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her. This is a great vacation, huh? Yeah. That's what I was hoping to hear. Cove walked back over to the group, still genuinely happy. Derek grinned at him welcomingly, and everyone else smiled at him, even Elizabeth. Well? Ma clapped her hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. It's almost lunchtime. I think I'll put something special together. Her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled. Bet you could use some help with that. That'd be absolutely wonderful. Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed. Is there something I could do? Your mom's exchanged a fond expression. Ma shook her head. That's very sweet, Derek, but it's all right. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors. Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away, discouraged. It's okay, I don't mind. He's a little bashful about it. You wondered if Mom's joke had just reminded him that he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It was getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment was meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Ma tried again to get things moving forward. Why don't you kids go have fun? You can all come back in about an hour. Make lunch for everyone. Mom nodded in agreement. Another stunning idea, Lonnie. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. That sounds like a plan then. I don't want to cramp your style. I've got some stuff to work on, so I can be out of your hair this afternoon. You should come by later too. No reason you should be the odd man out. Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his neck nervously. He grinned, a wavering but pleased smile. I appreciate the invite. He looked over at the assembled crowd with knowing glances. I can help too. With as many people as you're feeding, that's going to be a lot of food. Didn't you hear what we told Derek? It wouldn't be fair to make you cook when we're the ones who are inviting you in. Ma raised an eyebrow when Cliff waved it off. I insist. Derek would be missing time with his pals. This would be a break for me. I'm quite the chef. Ma and Mom exchanged further glances before Mom shrugged. An airtight argument. If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Chef Cliff. Cliff's grin widened and seemed more hyped than you'd expect him to be about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fond smile on his face. Then, all us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos are staying out? Maybe not all of them. Ma tilted her head, a silent question for Elizabeth. Your sister thought for a moment. I'll stay with the kids. That's great. Both your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Elizabeth looked at you and the others, a curious expression on her face. So what now? You silently wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you to avoid getting roped into work. Then again, she could just genuinely want to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question. Want to go down to the shopping street? It's been a while. And I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on. Yeah, sure. Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there 1,001 times. It's new to me. Let's do it. You strolled across the road as a group and down to the beach, then to the left. Took less than 15 minutes to arrive. One of the conveniences of Sunset Bird. The four of you looked around at the familiar shops, trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well. That's so cool. He ran over to a street magician who was currently doing a card trick for a group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man on his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam on his face. What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or do you just show up and start doing stuff? Why would you even ask? It's a public street. I'm sorry, who? Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat? Please, Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. Derek chuckled. his eyes searching up and down the scene. Maybe there's a boss of the shopping street? No one does any of this around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls. It's different if someone wants a real store. But here I'm pretty sure people are just putting on their little shows whenever they want and do whatever. That's so neat. Would we be allowed to do something too? Cove laughed and Derek began almost vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. What would we do? Well, I don't know what. Not yet. I mean, I just found out it's a possibility, you know? But there's got to be something. We know cool stuff. I'm sure if we think about it, we can plan a show that really got a crowd pumped. I'm going to give a look to the other two. Derek continued to brainstorm out loud about different potential performances while you glanced over at Cove and Elizabeth. I mean, I can bounce a soccer ball on my head. Last time I tried, I got 8 bounces before it fell. I wouldn't bring a ball here. Why not? Cove gestured to everything around the stalls, the people, all the colorful chaos that made up the shopping street. Would you want to chase a lost ball here? What if you hit somebody? Even if you're good, someone else could bump into you. That's true. Derek thought about it some more. Then he watched another performer, a woman doing tricks with 2 small dogs. One was fluffy and cream-colored, while the other was a cool gray. The woman held up rings. Both animals jumped through openings, happy to receive a treat at the end. Derek brightened. Maybe I'll teach crabs how to race? Crabs? It could work. With some amusement, the gang continued to peruse the stalls. Elizabeth found some earrings with a dangling, badly misprinted globe that everyone laughed at. Cove picked out a blob as Iceland, but Derek thought that it had to be Greenland. This is a world with what looks like 9 continents. I think you're both wrong. No, it's Australia. The other 3 giggled at your interjection. Suddenly, Cove froze. He stared at him and then tried to see what caught his attention. Uh-oh. When you saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. What was that kid's name? In the crowds, Jeremy, that's right. His bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in a kitchen sink. It was Jeremy. Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, and his eyes widened in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned and Cove sighed. Neither of them were happy to see him again. I looked away. You don't even want to start with Jeremy's shenanigans today. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint of a clue. Jeremy simply scoffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled loudly. Bet he's not going to start anything. He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk. See, that was the mean kid. Huh? She still didn't get it. That first summer day hadn't made nearly as much of an impression on her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it off. Just forget about him. I already have. He laughed and Cove smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Your eyes wandered over where Jeremy disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him either. He was only going to be in town for a vacation with his parents, he hated. That glimpse was probably the last time you would ever see him. We don't need to talk about Jeremy. Elizabeth snapped her fingers in front of your face. Apparently you had spaced out. Cove and Derek were already at the next stall. Come on, unless you want to get left here. You nodded and caught up with the others. Cove raised an eyebrow. What were you thinking about? Nothing. He gave you a searching look, but let it drop when Derek yelled at you to go check something out. You couldn't help but wonder, though. What would have happened if you would have interacted with Jeremy more? You were glad that you wouldn't find out. Jeremy was unlike anyone you had ever met before. He came out of nowhere, pissy. You and the group moved on from the stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to joking. You all enjoyed what little time you had left. As Elizabeth mentioned, the hour was almost up. The little trip had flown by and lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the balls of his feet. Come on, guys, let's get going. Let's get going so now it's all about Derek. Come on, guys, let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving. If we have to. Cove stretched one of his arms lazily. Let's go then. You looked at him appraisingly. I feel like this is too much. We've given him shit privately. We don't need to do it publicly. You nodded at him. Then you followed Elizabeth as she took it upon herself to lead the way home. She walked fast, much faster than Derek preferred. She kept gaining a lead, and then Derek would jog back up to the group. With Cove's long legs, he had no trouble keeping up. I would walk with Cove, obviously. You kept close to your neighbor. You both chatted about things you'd seen at the shopping street, with Derek chiming in every so often. You caught Cove smiling at you a couple times. He was happy you were spending time with him. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time you had made it back. Derek got the front door and held it open for everyone, as you each moseyed inside. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved. Welcome back, everyone. You made it just in time. Hope you're hungry. So did everyone have a nice time out? She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware have already been placed out. You took your normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you, and Derek took the seat to your left. Cove sat on your right. Oh yeah, we had a great time. It was fine. I had fun. I got to. Yeah, the bank heist went off without a hitch. Your joke got some chuckles going around the table. That's good in my book. Casually, Mr. Holden sat in the empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses on the table. She looked down at the gathering. It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. I can't remember the last time we had a group this big over for a meal. You pass the drinks down to the other side. Make sure you all get one. Sure. Those close to the cups obliged and started offering waters around. As everyone got set up, Ma chided Elizabeth to take her elbows off the table. And you shouldn't slouch, she pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table. Oops. Mr. Holden seemed unsure about the sudden attention, carefully rearranged his posture to something suitable for a fancy dinner. He smiled sheepishly at Ma. Elizabeth rolled her eyes, and Ma gave a level look at her. You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house, either. Elizabeth groaned, long suffering. Ma giggled and Mr. Holden chuckled. The lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here. Derek blushed, but it was true. His posture was upright and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. His table manners, on top of his attempts to aid your parents, made him the model of meal attendee behavior. It's nothing. It's true, though. You've been a lovely guest. Noticed that, too. It's always nice when you stay over, Derek. Derek smiled and sat a little taller in his chair. And do you have anything good to say about our other guest? She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Or is there just nothing to say? Well, Cove is my number one, but he does still clean his hands by wiping them on his pants. Cove frowned at that and absent-mindedly brushed his hands on his pant legs. Your mom's laughed lightly. Elizabeth, you should know after all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore. Cove smiled awkwardly. Thanks. Let's go with that one. Next time, Derek is really going to stay inside to cook. He's practically a mini adult. If he's joining us grown-ups, then you're going to have to treat him like one. Okay, so, Mr. Suarez, how go your taxes? Derek shook his head and chuckled. Everyone ate their meal together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you and the others played a couple games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. Time passed quickly, and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holden talked to your moms, and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as Dad finished up, he would be leaving. It'd be cool to stay, but we have some stuff to do before everything closes today. Yeah, bye. Could you move? I need the phone. Cove raised an eyebrow at Elizabeth, and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He sidestepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you figured was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be on there for a while. You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. Seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone started saying their various farewells.
Talk to you later.
See you later, Cove. We gotta do this again sometime. Yeah, see ya. Cove turned to you and smiled slightly. Bye, Mandy. I think it was the last time we tried to hug him, it went poorly. So we're gonna hug him goodbye. Step forward and spread your arms wide. Cove only had a moment to react before you encircled him in your arms. Cove hugged you back tightly. His chest rumbled as he laughed. Seriously, dude, we'll have to hang out later. I'm gonna miss you during the school. He offered Cove a high five and the two boys clapped their hands together. Cove and his dad left soon after that. Your parents started cleaning up the house. Elizabeth was still chatting to her friends on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He elected to stay outside in front of the house to wait for his dad to pick him up. You decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze blew through your hair and Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot. Thanks for waiting with me. Kicked at the ground distractedly. Dad's still gonna be a while, so do you want to go for a walk? Sure, I don't mind. Two of you walked down the street again, just wandering without a destination planned. It's a quiet stroll, too quiet for Derek being the company. You turned to him when you had noticed he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow you ended up at the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, now you noticed a frown creeping on his face. Derek smiled when he realized you were watching. At least his mouth was turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away and the smile fell off his face. His eyes stared intently at the ground. You raised an eyebrow. Is everything okay? I'm a little sad. It's just with school starting back up again, it's going to be harder to visit. I'm going to have homework and clubs and practices and everything else. It really sucks we go to different schools. His face screwed up and his fists were closed tightly together. It was really concerning him. What if we don't have time? We're gonna bring some optimism. We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for the weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked up at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. Plane flew high with the jet stream tailing behind it. Then he turned to the ground again. Derek's face was tilted far enough down that it was harder to read his expression. Hey Mandy, I actually wanted to talk to you about something, if you don't mind. There was a pause and you waited for him to finish his thought. I was just kind of wondering, do you like guys at all? Like, would you ever want to be with someone who was a boy? Sorry if that's weird to ask. I mean, yeah. Okay, then. He hesitated before finishing his question. So, what I mean is, is there any guy you think is kind of cool that you like around here? Not at school or anything like that. He ducked his head further. You thought about it. Should we make this torture? We'll just go. There's a lot of guys I think are cool. Oh, Derek shrugged and then started to mumble and wonder. Maybe you don't get what I'm trying to ask. So Derek pulled himself together. Somewhat meekly, he looked at you while he tried to project confidence. His posture was too tight for you to believe it. He was nervous. You know, thinking ahead and everything is important. You've got to get yourself a game plan and all that. It's good to make plans, especially backup plans. Oh, this is sad. He's like, I can be your backup. This is depressing. Don't do that. Don't settle for that, Buster. He babbled, all full of energy and forced gusto. Well, anyways, I heard about this thing where people make pacts with their good friends that if they don't find anyone else, then they get together. Together. Like, they get married and stuff. So I was thinking, since it's good to have plans, it might be cool if we, like, did something like that. His eyes widened, and then he started to make frantic hand gestures. Just, then we'd never have to worry about it in the future for finding someone. We could set it like a whole decade in the future, forever from now. We'd have graduated high school and probably college too. We'd have jobs and be really grown up. I mean, we'd probably have our own places and maybe our own pets and student loans and cars. Derek babbled on for a while more. It was as if all the words he'd held in silence during your walk had burst out now, all at once. So yeah, what do you think? I don't think that would work. I'm sorry, Derek. Aw, don't worry about it. That's okay. Just an idea. Thanks for hearing me out and answering my questions and stuff. Felt a little worried that Derek wasn't happy. When he saw your face, he smiled encouragingly. I promise, I'm not mad. I was just wondering. I'm sure things will be okay in the future, no matter what. You just nodded. You didn't spend much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so you made your way back to your street. After Derek went back home, you decided to settle in for the night. Stretching your arms over your head, you noticed that the living room and the phone were free. We haven't talked to her in a while. You picked up the receiver and quickly punched in the familiar number while going to take a seat on the couch. Soon enough, after explaining the situation to the housekeeper, Leigh answered. Hey, Leigh, can you talk? Definitely, we practically have to. My gosh, can you believe it's almost time for school to start? What happened to our summer? School starts first thing tomorrow for me. Ew, I thought starting next week was bad enough. Enjoy your last week. Oh, I will. I hope you'll survive your first day. Me too, I need a good year. Ditto. At least summer was nice while it lasted, right? We were busy. Yeah, fondly. You thought about all the best memories you made this summer. Leigh was there for some, but you were still many you hadn't filled her in on yet. We'll talk about her summer. What was your big highlight of the summer, Leigh? Talking to you was always the best part of my summer. Even though you thought it was a phone call, you just knew that Leigh was winking at you. Come on, tell me. What, you don't believe me? Leigh. Alright, okay, so a high point for me was when I took a trip with my parents to Europe. That was amazing. You and Leigh continued to go over your adventures until both of you were yawning to each other over the phone. At that, you decided it was time to say goodbye for now. You did have school to wake up for in the morning. Bye, Leigh. Night, Mandy. Talk to you later. You left the phone on the side table for now. Looking at the clock on the wall, you saw there was only about 10 minutes until your moms would be insisting you had to go to bed so you could be rested for school tomorrow. You stretched your legs out on the couch and sighed in defeat, watching the minute hand change 1 minute closer to bedtime. You rearranged yourself, feeling restless, and then look out the window. Startled initially, you spotted a figure in the hills. It was Cove. With all the surprise faded, you realized it really wasn't that much of a shock at all. It was exactly something Cove would do. You went outside to meet with him. Strolling casually, you went over to the front door. When you arrived, you noticed how many fireflies were out that night. They drifted along lazily, barely minding your presence, as if you waited to reach the top of the hill. Cove turned towards you as you approached, and you noticed right away that Cove looked happy to see you. Hey! You had a bounce in your step. You weren't sure how long you'd get before your moms roped you back inside for bed. What are you doing out here? Nothing, really. He shrugged, seeming unhappy with his own answer. You stared at him, waiting for him to continue. Well, I guess I was feeling kind of weird about stuff, so I'm getting some fresh air before bed. We can't ask him. I know how you feel. It's hard to stay still. Tomorrow's going to be the start of a new year. The mention of school, a small noise escaped him. Cove let himself fall back onto his butt and then all the way down, so he was laying on his back. He looked up at the sky. You lowered yourself to lay back on the hill. He had been lost in thought, or was possibly waiting for you to situate yourself, but he started speaking unprompted again. Thanks for telling me about my dad. The money he offered you to be my friend. This is probably the last thing you were expecting out of him. Cove seemed to pick up on that and stretched his arms out wide in front of him. This is where we met, remember? It happened that day. You could recall the sad little boy with the pink cast, who you found in this very spot. It felt like a lifetime ago. Kind of have a strange feeling looking at you. Not in a bad way, just thinking about you then and really seeing you now, it's something. It's almost unbelievable how much of an impact he made on your life just by moving in next door. You couldn't even imagine what your days might have looked like in a world where you hadn't met him. Cove glanced back at you, waiting for a response, and you had no idea what to say. Then, still without a word from you, Cove gave an exaggerated shrug. What? It's you. Huh? He snickered before answering. He looked thoroughly amused with your reaction. That's what you do all the time, so I'm being you. Don't be rude. Let's see. He felt bashful about his joke. Feeling self-conscious, you glanced at the ground and felt a blush burn across your face. When you dared to look back, you saw that Cove was smiling apologetically. He wasn't trying to be mean with it. Honestly, there weren't that many people you could think of who could tease you about something like that. Returning his smile, you realized there was no denying that you two have been around each other for a long time. Cove broke the quiet before it could fully settle. Hey, I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, see you then. With a final wave, Cove headed for home. But you stayed there a few minutes longer. Your mind kept going back to his simple statement, see you tomorrow. No matter how much was changing around you, there were some things in your life that always seemed to remain true. The hills felt warm to you that night. Before you knew it, you were getting comfortable under the covers in your room. Your mind couldn't help but still be buzzing with thoughts about the future. You felt nervous, always nervous. I'm an anxious gal. Every bit of your gut felt like it was being turned into a pretzel. A new chapter of your life was about to begin. You were worried what new changes were waiting for you. Slowly, your eyes grew heavy as you drifted off to sleep, your mind spinning with wishful thoughts. No matter what happened next, you could only hope that you would make the most of it. You were ensnared in a dream when a noise from outside world jostled you. My eyes snapped open. The light clatter continued. Now you were more alert. You could distinguish as tapping sounds, quiet, slow, but persistent. Each beat was like being poked. You couldn't ignore it. You lifted your head from the pillow and looked for the source. Not much work was needed to puzzle it out. It was from the window. With that, you knew exactly what it was. From the color of the light filtering into your room, it was too early for anyone to be awake, including the sun. It had barely hauled itself over the horizon. But that didn't stop some people, it seemed. You sat up in bed and opened the window. Cool air, not yet warmed by the day, tickled your face as it pushed into your room. Just as you'd expected, there was your neighbor crouching on your windowsill. He was fully dressed, though, not for school. He was wearing a wetsuit and a fond smile. Hi, Mandy. He stared back, blinking. So technically we won't be back in school for a few more hours. His voice was delicate yet deliberate, each word a careful explanation. Classes haven't actually started yet, so do you want to hit the beach with me one more time this summer? We'll say always. His smile widened affectionately. You rushed to get changed to something suitable while Cove climbed back down to ground level. Your limbs, still half asleep, struggled somewhat as you attempted to coordinate them into a swimsuit, but you got there in the end. Soon you were tiptoeing out of your front door, clutching a towel. Cove was already there to greet you. Your eyes met. Cove's gaze darted to your destination, back to you. You checked the door was closed and gave him a thumbs up. Two of you leapt into action. Wordlessly, you began to run down the familiar path ahead, Cove beside you. The thrill of your illicit outing made you want to laugh. Not that you dared. If anyone in your family looked out and saw it, then your summer would be back to being over. One glance at Cove told you he was exactly the same, holding back snickers for fear of being hurt and caught. The towel streamed out from under your arm like a cape. You were running so fast downhill that simply keeping your balance and not tumbling down was the real threat. It was just enough of one to make you slow down your pace. For every step you took, the beach was a little closer and the day a little brighter. What lay ahead for you would arrive, and you were happy to meet it. In between. Oh, I forgot. Alright, let's make our... I'm gonna leave the two-tone. I think that's fine. Gotta get the vibes right, you know? Gotta have the black nails. Okay, we're done. I think we're gonna move up to crush at this point. I think we've dropped enough hints. Okay, so with that, we're gonna end here for today. I will be back with more in the next one, and we'll see what this new step brings. Thank y'all so much for watching. I had fun. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see y'all next time. Bye, gang. Love y'all.